Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. I'm here for Poppy Stamps today. I want to show you how I created this New Year's card without any New Year's products. So the first thing that I did was grab an 8.5 by 11 piece of white cardstock. This is pretty heavyweight cardstock by Gina. It is 110 pound. So I'm going to cut that in half and then I'm going to score it in half as well. That's going to create my card base. It's going to be 4.25 by 5.5. And I have a second one for another card if I want to save that for a future project. Now I'm going to cut some thinner white cardstock. I don't need to use that really thick stuff for my card panel. That's going to be cut down to about 4 by 5.25. So just a slightly smaller card panel than the card base. Next, I'm going to cut a piece of glitter cardstock. This is actually self-adhesive glitter paper, so I'm going to cut that to 4.25 by 5.5. I'm going to use some new ink that I got from Delicata, which is a pigment ink, and it is gold. It's got some shimmer and sparkle to it, and I'm going to grab one of those stars from the Magic and Sparkle stamp set, and I'm going to stamp my background of the panel there. And I have a piece of typing paper underneath so that I can stamp off the side to make it look like a piece of pattern paper. Again, I don't have some New Year's paper, so I'm going to just create my own. The next thing I'm going to do is take a star from a different stamp set. This is the Wintertime Fairies, and I'm going to stamp in between in the open spaces there using that same Delicata Gold ink. I really like it a lot. It's very shimmery and super, super pretty. So once I fill in all those open spots, again, I'm stamping off the side for some of them to make it look like a random pattern and make it look more like pattern paper. Then I'm going to heat set it. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's a pigment ink, it's going to sit on top of the paper, and if I don't heat set it a little bit, it's going to smear. Now, because that is a pigment ink pad, it's a foam raised pad, you can just use the ink pad and rub it along the edges of our card panel there, and that'll give us a nice golden look to the edges of the paper. And I'm going to, again, heat set this, not a ton, but just enough so that I don't smear it, because I tend to smear pigment ink a lot. Next, I'm going to apply my 4.25 by 5.5 inch piece of sparkly glitter paper to my card base. And then I am going to take my little card panel there that I stamped in gold ink, and I'm going to pop it up on some white fun foam. So it's tough to adhere fun foam to glitter cardstock, so I am going to use a liquid adhesive for that. I'm using my Ranger Multimedia Matte and just putting a ton down there just so that it really adheres really well. And same thing with going from fun foam to paper. It's probably easier to use a liquid adhesive. You could use from the paper to the fun foam, you could use a tape runner for that if you wanted to. But since I had the liquid adhesive out, I decided to apply it that way. The next thing I'm going to do is take a precision base plate for my Sizzix machine. I'm going to cut out the Wrapped Star Die from Poppy Stamps out of some pretty glitter cardstock, but the cardstock is pretty thick, and because it's a glitter cardstock, I wanted to make sure to use my precision base plate so that I could get a really nice clean cut. Now I'm just going to take a pointer from my tool-in-one and just poke out that star and then poke out those extra pieces that I don't need. You could do a really fun star where you could cut it out of silver as well and then fill in those pieces with a different color. That would be fun. But for this one, I'm just going to use a little bit of the Multimedia Matte with that fine tipped adhesive there, and I'm just going to run it along all the edges of my wrapped star so that I can adhere it down to my card panel there. It's really helpful to have some type of precision tip when you're doing this. The other thing you could do is use a very thin double-sided adhesive like the Therm Easy Cut adhesive. I didn't think of it at the time, so that's why I'm using the liquid adhesive here. So you could see that I was using my acrylic block to hold everything down, just keep it nice and straight. I have some black cardstock here. I'm going to apply my anti-static powder tool, and then I have a sentiment from those Wintertime Fairies that says the stars are brightly shining. And I thought that would be perfect for New Year's Eve, even though it's not a Happy New Year's or anything like that kind of sentiment. I think it fits really well with the look of the card, and you can write Happy New Year's on the inside. And then once I pour some white embossing powder on top, I'm going to take out my heat tool again, make sure it's nice and hot so it doesn't warp the paper, and then bring it to that stamped sentiment and melt the embossing powder. Once this is cool, then I'm going to, and I do that by shaking it around, that's how I really cool it off. I'm going to take a dusting cloth and just wipe away that excess powder there, because on the black paper you really do see that excess anti-static powder, but it's so important to use. Now I'm going to use my Tim Holtz Tonic Studios trimmer to get a nice straight cut on my little sentiment there, and you can see that I'm even going to cut just a tiny bit off the top there. I didn't want this sentiment strip to be too wide, and that trimmer is perfect for cutting off tiny little strips. I'm going to use some Thermoweb Memory Runner XL, which is just my tape runner, to adhere this sentiment strip onto my card panel there. And then I'm going to take some Tonic Studios Nouveau Crystal Drops in gold and just put a few little drops on that sentiment strip just for added interest. I like the dimension that it added, and then brought in that gold once more with the gold background. I'm tapping the back just to round them out a little bit, and that completes my card. So you do not need to buy New Year's Eve papers or stickers or anything. You can use the Poppystamps, stamps and dies that you have on hand. If you're interested in checking out the supplies I use, they will all be linked down below as always. You can click here to subscribe to my YouTube channel, or you can go over to my website and check that out there, and I'll have a couple of other videos that you might be interested in, including some other Poppystamps videos. I want to thank you so much for stopping by today. Have a very happy new year, and I'll see you again soon.